I'm Len May, and I'm the CEO, co-founder of Endocanna Health. We're an endocannabinoid genomics company, and I have the distinct pleasure of having Dr. Chris Spooner join me, who's a naturopathic specialist, and we're going to discuss this topic and many others. Tune in. Thanks.
In terms of the immune system and looking at your DNA and some of the things you just mentioned, is it different if you already have the COVID-19 or you're producing symptoms? Like there's one path where you look at preventative measures. What are you susceptible to based on your potential genotypes? But however, if you've already have the virus or been diagnosed or are symptomatic of that, are there different pathways, or is it a different path and different genotypes that you look at in that, so somebody has a greater immune resistance, etc. So I just want to kind of separate the two, so maybe you can talk about both of those areas.
Yeah, so let's take the one of kind of like the epigenetic stress that you mentioned here a little bit. Some of the factors that we're seeing with this illness, with this viral infection, is that people that are, diabetic and are, cardiovascular disease. And it looks like, for those of you that have been following this at all or anything, you may be noticing that there's a conversation about ibuprofen. And should people be using ibuprofen? And does that make the disease worse? From what we understand around the genetics of that is that there is a receptor in the lining of your blood vessels, kind of like a little locking key, that is the entry point for the virus, and it's called ACE. Well, it turns out that same receptor is also involved in things like blood pressure medications. And when your blood glucose is out of control, like in diabetes, it makes more of this little lock, if you will. Other things that come in as ibuprofen also gets more of this receptor out there. So there's some cases where there might be some genetics that are involved in that particular receptor that speeds up your susceptibility to the virus, allows it to get in and be more problematic, and also could help accelerate you into more significant problems, the acute respiratory distress. So that's one part where the genetics start to really factor into that. On the other side, in terms of the immune response, when you actually have that, when you have the virus, again, your genes are, your body's going to be going and drawing on that information to make all sorts of different types of proteins and start to, put the defenses in place on that. So there'll certainly be some genetics around that as well, too. I saw a paper that suggested that, for example, in Iran, there's a higher prevalence of an immunodeficiency that's genetically based, and that may be one reason why people are more susceptible, or people of Iranian descent, may have some more issues with that as well too. But this isn't uncommon. We see it in lots of different situations, where different populations in different, Asian, Caucasian, Mediterranean, what have you, First Nations, this type of thing, you may have different susceptibilities based on your genetics. And one of the challenges with this, though, and it's really important, is leads to some of the contradictions that we start to hear about, which is that, this isn't a problem here in Spain, for example. They're saying ibuprofen's not a problem in Spain, whereas in France and in the UK, they're saying yes, it is. And so, is that genetically based, or is that something that's tied in with that? My suspicion is that yeah, but again, no one's really asking that question because we're kind of right in the middle of a firefight right now.
Hey everyone, I hope you found this information super, super helpful. Please don't forget to subscribe below right here, and stay tuned for all the latest and greatest from Endocanna and what we have to say about your endocannabinoid system and DNA. Because remember, cannabis is personal. Stay healthy, stay well. Thank you.